For 8 years, Nintendo ruled the living room and the backpack with a device that felt like a plastic toy. Now, it's premium tech. The original Switch defined an entire generation of gaming. Its hybrid design proved that players wanted to take their favorite console games on the go, resulting in a staggering 150 million units sold. Nintendo is taking that exact same footprint and stretching the screen out to 7.9 inches. They are also adding a second USB-C port to the top edge, finally letting you charge the device while it's propped up on a table. These physical changes strip away the hollow, creaky plastic feel of the previous model. The kickstand is sturdy, the bezels are thin, and the chassis is rigid, dense. Players asked for better build quality, and Nintendo delivered. The Switch 2 looks and feels like an adult's machine. But growing up is expensive. That leap in build quality is permanently tied to a massive hike in the cost to actually play the thing. This chart breaks down the true entry cost. In 2017, a base Switch and a game meant you were gaming for $359. Today, the base Switch 2 and a game puts your day one total at $529. That $80 digital game tag isn't an anomaly either. It is the new baseline for Nintendo's major first-party releases going forward. And physical copies are rumored to run even higher due to the faster storage required on the new cartridges. For decades, Nintendo has positioned itself as the affordable alternative to a PlayStation or Xbox. This 50% jump in baseline costs moves their entry-level pricing directly into competition with those high-end consoles. If you want the absolute best hardware Nintendo has ever made, you have to accept that the cost of entry for their flagship ecosystem has reached a new, higher plateau. So what does that premium get you? The biggest immediate upgrade is the bump from a 720p resolution to a 1080p display, which makes text readable and textures drastically sharper in handheld mode. The screen also supports a variable refresh rate up to 120 Hz. This gives developers a choice. They can push for incredibly smooth UI and rapid gameplay, or they can dial the screen down to 30 Hz during slower moments to save battery. Here is exactly what that variable refresh rate looks like in practice. On the left, a standard 60 Hz screen drops frames into rigid, spaced-out buckets. On the right, the 120 Hz panel feeds you twice the visual information, resulting in motion that feels buttery and perfectly responsive. There's a significant catch, though. The launch Switch 2 relies entirely on a standard LCD screen, leaving OLED technology on the table. Without an OLED panel, you lose out on perfect inky black levels. You also lose the power efficiency that OLEDs naturally provide, which becomes a serious issue when driving 1080p graphics at high refresh rates. The thermal load is high enough that Nintendo actually embedded an active cooling fan straight into the new dock, which is what allows the console to push a 4K output to your television. Pushing higher resolutions on a 120 Hz LCD requires serious juice. Until we get independent teardowns, battery life remains the single biggest risk factor for anyone picking this up for travel. The controllers received just as much attention as the screen. The notoriously plastic rails that caused the old Joy-Cons to wobble and snap over time are entirely gone. Instead, the controllers lock into place using a heavy-duty magnetic system. The internal shoulder buttons are now made of solid steel, forming a secure, rigid bond right against the side of the tablet. The only physical vulnerability left is the row of exposed contact pins on the tablet itself. If a younger player twists the controller the wrong way before pulling, those pins could easily bend. But the strangest addition lives on the bottom of the right controller. An integrated optical sensor allows you to lay the Joy-Con flat and slide it around exactly like a computer mouse. It's a specific fix for a long-standing interface hurdle. Heavy menu-based PC genres, like real-time strategy and city builders, can now be navigated without awkwardly dragging a cursor with an analog stick. The Joy-Cons are finally large enough for adult hands, but exploiting their most unique new feature means you need a flat desk, sacrificing the ability to play completely untethered on an airplane or a couch. The hardware decisions are solid, but the software ecosystem is where Nintendo starts nickel and diming the player. Let's audit what you actually get for your money. We plotted the new Switch 2 software features on a simple matrix. The horizontal axis tracks the cost, from free to expensive, and the vertical axis tracks the actual value added to your gameplay. Up here in the free but valuable corner, we have GameShare. If you buy a multiplayer title, up to 3 friends in the same room can temporarily piggyback off your copy and play on their own screens without spending a dime. Over in the high-cost, high-value section is the new picture-in-picture voice chat. It is a fantastic feature that lets you see your friends' reactions live, but it requires a $50 camera accessory, a dedicated C button on the controller, and an active paid Nintendo Online subscription to function. Below that sits backward compatibility. You can play your old Switch 1 games, but if you want them to actually look better or run at 120 frames per second, publishers are charging real money for digital upgrade packs. Then there is the Welcome Tour demo. Rival platforms bundle their interactive tech demos in the box for free to teach you how the new hardware works. Nintendo is forcing players to buy theirs on the eShop. The only real bone thrown to legacy fans is the arrival of classic GameCube titles to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, bringing high-resolution ports of beloved 20-year-old games. The ecosystem is far more social and robust than anything Nintendo has built before, but they are locking basic quality-of-life expectations behind aggressive paywalls. So, does the Switch 2 make financial sense for you right now? That depends on what hardware you already own and how you manage your gaming budget. Looking at this decision tree, everything flows from one simple question. What is your primary gaming device today? If you are an enthusiast who wants 4K living room output and access to massive third-party ports on an airplane, you jump in on day one. You just have to be willing to stomach the $80 software tax and settle for an LCD panel. If you are a heavy handheld user who demands perfect contrast and maximum battery life, let the early adopters test the waters. Hold on to your current device and wait for Nintendo to inevitably release an OLED revision. And if you are buying for a family or casual players, skipping this launch window lets you save over $500 on hardware and accessories, while the massive Switch 1 library remains perfectly viable. Purchasing a new console used to be an easy holiday impulse buy. Now it requires you to actively sign up for a high-performance, high-cost financial ecosystem. Nintendo finally addressed almost every major physical complaint from the last 8 years. They built a highly capable, mature device, but attached a decidedly grown-up price tag to match. You have to weigh the allure of that beautiful new hardware against the harsh reality of your wallet. Check the day one lineup, map out the true cost of an $80 game standard, and use that logic to make the right move for your setup.